Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to Roots Refuge, the channel. I'm at my office right now, not at the farm. I had to come down here today to work on some stuff on my podcast, and as I was getting ready to walk out the door, this box was delivered. So I grabbed it to bring with me down here. It was nice and quiet where we could open this seed order and talk about it. I love you, so I don't open a box of seeds without you. It's so fun to get to share the excitement that comes in the package form of seeds. So if you've been here very long, you've probably seen a seed unboxing or two. I like to joke that my kids used to watch these videos of like kids opening toys and different things like that, and I'd be like, come on guys, how fun can it be to watch somebody else open something up? And then I realized that I could get completely engrossed in somebody talking about their seed order when they open it. Now, is it the same as the toy opening? I don't know. I like sharing opening seed orders simply because it's a great way to remember and share why you bought different things, what you plan on doing with them, your experience, how you use them. So grab a cup of coffee or tea. We're going to be here for a minute. This is a pretty good sized order, and I am going to have quite a few things to say about what's going on in this box. So this is from Botanical Interests. It's one of the seed companies that I've ordered from for multiple years. This company was somewhat recently acquired by Epic Gardening. You may have seen his stuff. He bought Botanical Interests, which is really cool. I love being able to support people who are creating content as well as doing business, and I just think it's really awesome. This has always been a really solid company. I've always had really good experiences with the packages of seeds that I get from them growing, and then also growing how they say they're going to. So sometimes an issue with seed companies is poor germination. Sometimes it's getting packages that are completely mislabeled. Now, that could happen from anybody, but I have ordered from places in the past where it was really prevalent, where they obviously weren't testing germination and stuff like that. But that's never been the case with Botanical Interests. I like that they have a lot of options. They typically have pretty good prices, and they have great sales. So I usually try to snag some seeds when there is a sale going. Speaking of which, right now is just a really good time to start thinking about buying your seeds, because it's coming to the end of the gardening season. Seed companies are often selling and closing out and clearancing the last season's seeds. So if you've ever noticed, whenever you get a package of seeds, there will be a date somewhere on them. Here, this one. This is already into next year's seeds, so this says sell by 12/2024. I made the very unfortunate mistake when I first started gardening, thinking that that was an expiration date. This isn't yogurt. They're not going to get weird after that date. It's fine. That's just a law that seed companies must abide by, where they have to sell seeds that are packaged for that year. That does not mean that they will not grow past that year. I regularly grow seeds that are several years old. If you store your seeds in a cool, dry place, they can last for many years. And though germination will decrease a little bit, you can still sow them and oftentimes get something from them. So do not throw your seeds away just because they're past the date on the back. However, because of that law where seed companies have to sell seeds that are grown that year for the next calendar year, they have to clearance them at the end of the season. So you can often get really good deals right now and buy seeds that were this last year's seeds and save them and plant them next spring, and you won't have any issues with germination. Now, before I dive into the actual contents of this box, I do get asked a lot, hey, where do you get your seeds that are non-GMO? Where do you get your seeds that are organic or heirloom? And I want to just very briefly touch on that, because I know many of you may be new gardeners, you may not know this information. GMO seeds, genetically modified seeds, are not available to the home gardener at a consumer level. So if you are going to actively buy GMO seeds, what you read about with GMO crops, that's going to be through commercial farming. So you don't have to worry about if you order from Botanical Interest, if you order from any other big seed company, if you go into the Dollar Tree or the Home Depot or whatever and buy seeds, you do not have to be concerned that those are non-GMO, or, you know, you're not going to accidentally buy GMO seeds, is what I'm trying to say. Now, that gets kind of confusing because a lot of seed companies do plaster non-GMO all over their labeling. That could potentially just be like an advertising thing, like how a lot of times orange juice says gluten-free on it, and it's like, well, obviously it's orange juice. It doesn't have any wheat in it. It's not gonna have gluten in it. But like, it could just be one of those things. It also could be that seed companies are just sick and tired of people asking, are these GMO seeds? And so they just go ahead and put it on there. I don't know. Either way, you can rest at ease on that. As far as organic seeds, I actually don't worry about that. So I know that I'm going to grow organically. I'm not going to put any sort of chemical fertilizers or pesticides on my garden at all. If you are gardening for the sake of marketing and you are going to be certified organic and you're going to claim that your food is organic, you have to prove that you used organic seeds. So if you go to a seed place like Johnny's or something like that, like they will have like commercial, like bulk amounts of organic seeds. Botanical Interest is really good about having conventional or organic seeds. Obviously the organic ones cost more. For me, that's not a make or break deal for me. I'm fine with conventional seeds personally. That's just a personal choice because I know that I'm going to grow them organically, and therefore I feel like my food will be organic enough for me to feel okay with it. So that's going to come down to preference. And with the heirloom thing, a lot of people will say, well, I want to be able to save seeds, so I need to get heirloom seeds. And while it is true that if you save seeds from an heirloom plant, given the assumption that it hasn't cross-pollinated with a neighboring plant, you'll save those seeds, you'll grow a plant that looks just like the parent plant. It's not really because they're heirloom, it's because they're open pollinated. So you can actually purchase open pollinated hybrids that will do the same thing. Heirloom just means it's a variety that's been around for, 50 plus years. People disagree on the amount of time, but more or less it's been passed down through generations. Open pollinated is when a variety is stabilized. So if you have a hybrid seed, it's especially like an F1 hybrid. That's the first generation cross between two parent plants, which means that F1 is consistent. Like you could grow 15 F1 hybrids of the same variety and they're all going to look more or less the same. But if you were to save seeds from those, it's very genetically unstable. It's kind of like how you can mix like a golden doodle. You can have a golden retriever and a poodle and you mix them, and the first litter of puppies may look a lot alike, but then if you breed that second generation, you're going to have a lot more variations in the genetics of what kind of puppies you have. Same thing with tomatoes. So you can still save seeds from hybrids. It's really a misconception to think that people will say, well, hybrids are all sterile. No, they're not. Like, you can save seeds from hybrids. Hybrids happen all the time. They happen on accident in the garden. So I don't let that make or break. Now, I love heirlooms just because I love a good story. I'm just a sucker for that. But hybrids have their place too. Hybrids have what's called hybrid vigor. Like, sometimes they will do better. So if you have a problem you're trying to solve, say you're having like a certain disease issue, a hybrid may solve that for you. And also sometimes they're just interesting. So I grow a mix. I grow more open pollinated and heirlooms than I do hybrids, but I'm not against hybrids. I don't think we should villainize any measure of gardening. So one of my favorite things about Botanical Interest is the amount of information that they give you. So you always get like seed starting guides in the packaging. You always get a free pack of seeds. This is a mesclun lettuce mix. This will be good for sowing in bags of soil here in the next couple of months as we go into the winter months. Also, their seed packets have a lovely amount of information. On the back, they show like a picture of what the seedling looks like. I've always thought that was super helpful for new gardeners, because if you have not gardened a lot and you have stuff popping up, you're like, I don't know if I planted this or if it's a weed. This gives you a picture, as well as just different tips on growing it and information about the variety. So I like that. On this little seed haul, I was mostly shopping for fall stuff. I live in South Carolina, zone 7B, 8A, and it's about time, like right now, middle of August, mid to late August, for me to be starting seeds for my fall garden. And then here in the next few weeks, I'll be direct sowing. We're in the middle of a really bad heat wave right now, so I'm not going to try to direct sow anything until after that. So I've given away a ton of my seeds, like just to local people who are getting started. And when I actually sat down to look at what I wanted to start, I realized I was short on a few things I really wanted to grow. So most of this is for fall garden this year. Some of this I will plant next year, and I'll just tell you about it. All right, well, I guess let's just start at the top. This is a cabbage. It's called Caraflex. My first time growing this. It's a 75-day variety. So if I start this from seed here within the next few weeks, especially with my high tunnel, I'll have no problem growing this over winter. If you're gardening outside, you can grow your fall garden outside and use frost fabric or even bed sheets. If it gets really, really cold, and I'm saying if it's consistently dropping down below maybe 25 Fahrenheit, which is like -3 Celsius, yeah, it could start getting a little damagey for cabbages, especially without some cover. So we don't deal with that where I live. You can pretty much grow this stuff outside most of the winter with a little bit of cover, and with a high tunnel, you're solid for the winter. So this reminded me a lot of Coeur d'Aubus's oxheart cabbage, and I thought that looked really good. The thing that stood out to me is it said that these heads get to be about 1.5 to 2 pounds fully grown. So it's a smaller cabbage. Cabbages can get huge. I've grown some honkin' cabbages that are 8 pounds or so once you strip all the outer leaves away, which that's great. I have a big family, but sometimes when you're just wanting to make a little bit of slaw to go with tacos, you don't necessarily want all of that at once. So I just liked the option. I thought the smaller cabbage was cool. This would be great if you had a small family and you weren't looking to make massive amounts of stuff. I got some green beans. I think I got a couple different kinds, yeah. So I got the Tavera filet green beans. I've grown this. I like these. My favorite kind of green beans are French green beans. This is French filet. So these are going to be very, very similar. But I like thin and soft green beans. I just prefer that, especially for eating fresh. For canning, I can go for the thicker ones, but for fresh eating, this is it for me. And I got 4 packages of these, and I'm going to go ahead and sow some of those now. So these will probably be, let's see, it's middle August, so yeah, these will probably be coming to maturity right when the frost comes. So it's a little bit of a risk on how much I'll get from these, because I may have just harvested very little and the frost come early and then it's out. If the frost comes when it's expected to come, which is the beginning of November, I should get a pretty good harvest out of these. And if the frost is a little late, I should get a lot of harvest out of these. So fall gardening, it's a little bit of a gamble, but that's another reason why I like the French green beans, because those really thin ones, I feel like they come on sooner. Red boar kale. This is a fantastic hardy kale. I would say even down to zone 5, you could grow this outside during the winter, especially with a little bit of cover. So with anything like this, whenever you're looking at winter gardening, acclimation is everything. So if you can direct sow this, it's great. It has to be cool enough for it to germinate well. So right now, it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius outside, and it might struggle with that, but if I were to sow this in the next couple of weeks, I can let this grow outside all winter. Kales vary, some are more hardy than others, but I have found Red Boar and Ragged Jack is another one that just is a beast when it comes to the cold. I remember in Arkansas once, we had a really cold winter, and it was the coldest day had been in a long time. Now there was snow on the ground. We had 18 inches of snow, which is very insulating. And then it dropped down to, I can't remember, it's -12 Fahrenheit, negative 20 something Celsius. It was very cold. And my kale was fine. It was completely unbothered. It was insulated with snow, which goes to show just a little bit of cover, even if it's frozen water cover, can pull things through. Let's see. Black Spanish radishes. This is kind of interesting. So I was just noticing this. A lot of these seed packages that they have, which I don't know if this is like something that they're actively doing, but there's a couple in this order that are like this. They're not actually packets. They're actually like little booklets that have the seeds inside. So this may have been just a temporary thing, but I actually really like it. So I wouldn't be upset if this was a more permanent thing. The reason being that with this being an attached package here, you could keep this booklet of information and access it a little bit easier than these seed packages. So a lot of these seed packages have information inside too, which is cool, but you have to take the seed package part to read it. Whereas this, you kind of have the package in this. Not all of them are like this, so I don't know, just an observation. Anyway, black Spanish radish. We grew these last year. Will loved them. He went on and on about them. I just bought this package for Will. I think they're great. I actually don't think I've met a radish I didn't like that I can think of. I guess I don't really care much for the tillage radishes, but even that, like I've had daikon radishes and like ferments that were really good, so I can't even say that. I've never met a radish I didn't like. But Will talked a lot about these, so I got those seeds for Will. Well, to grow in my garden, but he could take some home if he wanted. Green Globe improved artichokes. I still have some artichoke plants. They came from botanical interest seeds, I believe. And they did great. If y'all recall, in my high tunnel last winter, we had artichokes. They actually bloomed in the spring, so we started cutting artichokes in the early spring. And I think we probably had 8 plants or so in there. And I lost count of how many artichokes we harvested. Dozens and dozens of them. It was profound. We moved them out of the high tunnel this year, and I decided I wanted to go ahead and start some more from seeds, just so I could give them a little more space outside. So I just got the same kind that worked for me already last time. Touchstone Gold Beets. Beets get a bad rap. Beets taste like dirt to some people. They really do. Some people will say, I don't like beets, they taste like dirt. And other people are like, beets don't taste like dirt. Yes, they actually do. They have a chemical compound in them called geosmin. It's the same chemical compound that actually exists in the soil that is released into the air when it rains. So you know that smell after the rain that smells like the earth? That's the smell of geosmin, which exists in beets. So different beets, different varieties of beets, have different levels of geosmin. Golden beets have the lowest level of geosmin. So if you've eaten a red beet before, or Kyoja beet, which is like the stripy ones, and you've been like, I don't like these red beets, they taste like dirt, maybe give golden beets a try if you want to. Another thing with any root vegetable, I think this applies to, but with beets specifically, if you've tried them cooked in a way that you didn't like, roasting them is really, I think, the best way to make their flavor shine, because it's going to concentrate and caramelize the sugars that are in them. So I really, really like golden beets. Of all the beets, golden beets are my favorite. So I was excited to get these and get them planted. I really like a good salad with roasted beets on it. That's it. That's what's going to happen with these. Let's see. Bok Choy. This is the Choco, C-H-O-K-O variety of bok choy. Now, I've never really successfully grown bok choy to any great degree. I've grown it, and pak choy and the purple bok choy. I've grown it, and I've gotten a few here and there, but for as many as I've planted, I have really, really not had success. However, it has turned into a fantastic trap crop. For whatever reason, I've not done it with the green, but with the purple bok choy, the insects flock to it. Now that's why I've not harvested much, but I can have a bed full of cabbages and kales and all these other brassicas and have bok choy in that bed, and the bok choy will be covered in insects, and they leave everything else alone. So I stopped expecting to get to eat the plant, and I still plant it. So I'm gonna try the green and see. I'm also gonna put some purple in the garden just because, and just have no expectation whatsoever of eating it. But I'm gonna try the green and see if it does pull the insects in quite the same as the purple does. Let's see, burgundy broccoli. This is just a really basic burgundy sprouting broccoli. So with broccolis, you have heading varieties, where you get that big tight head of broccoli like what you're used to buying at the store. And then you have sprouting broccolis, which it's broccoli rabe, if you've ever seen that. It's often served in really like nice restaurants, like steakhouses and stuff like that will have broccoli rabe. That's sprouted broccoli. And sometimes they'll have it at the store, though it's typically a more seasonal item, or at like upscale grocery stores they'll have it. And it's usually sold in a little bundle. It's more expensive than the heading broccolis. My family will, I mean, they don't really turn their nose up at much. If I cook it, they'll for the most part eat it. But with sprouting broccoli, my kids all eat that enthusiastically. Whereas if I were to just do regular broccoli, for whatever reason, they don't. This gets, because it's smaller bites, it's got more stem. I guess you get more, like when you roast it, you get kind of a better flavor. The purple one, I cannot remember ever growing this. I may have, and I'm just not remembering. I don't think I have. I've definitely grown rapini broccoli multiple times. And with these, both sprouting broccoli, same thing, different colors. You can eat some of the leaves, like the smaller, you can eat any of the leaves. They're tastiest when they're smaller. And they get these little heads that come out of like the armpits of the plant, and you just harvest those and they just keep producing them. So whereas a heading broccoli, you're gonna get one harvest of one big head, and then they'll do some side shoots. You'll get some smaller heads if you leave the plant in the ground. With these, you're gonna get a whole lot more little harvests. So we love sprouting broccoli. I'm excited to have that. Oh, Napa cabbage. This variety is called 1 kilo slow bolt. One of the issues that you have in growing Napa cabbage is they bolt fast. They bolt faster than any of the other cabbages. And I don't think that I've grown the 1 kilo slow bolt before, but this is what we're gonna try. I love Napa cabbage though. How we use this, kimchi, that's one, making fermented kimchi out of Napa cabbages. Probably my favorite way to eat it. And then of course we just eat kimchi with just anything like rice, or make some meat and rice and kimchi. But also frying this in a saute pan, just like I would any other cabbage. You just cut it up, saute some onions and garlic and oil, and then put the cabbage in until it's wilted. You could put some meat like broccoli, I looked down at that, bacon or ham or something like that that's going to add some fat to it, and then finish it once it's done with a splash of some vinegar, like apple cider vinegar, or you could do balsamic vinegar if you have like a nice flavored vinegar. Just a splash of that with the acid to cut the fat. So good. Let's see, red acre cabbage. This is a tried and true for me. I've grown this multiple times. It's just they're smallish, they don't get huge. I don't mind huge cabbages, and I'll grow huge cabbages, but again, I like to have a variety. I like to grow multiple varieties so that, for instance, when I'm going out and I want to make a bunch of sauerkraut, I can harvest a few really big cabbages. But if I'm just making dinner for just our household, I don't need 8 pounds of cabbage. So smaller ones is where I lean into for that. I should say, regarding the red acre, that one of the things that it says in here is that it stores well. I usually succession sow my cabbages and then just harvest them as we need them through the winter. So I can't really speak to the storage of them, because I really don't ever cut my cabbages and then store them long term, maybe for like a day or two until I can use them. It says though that it's resistant to splitting, and I have found that to be true with the red cabbage. There have been varieties for me of cabbages that they get kind of big and then they split down the middle of the head, and I mean, you can still use them, but you're gonna lose some with that. So the fact that it said it was resistant, I thought was cool. Let's see, next we've got carrots. Quite a few carrots. I don't know if there's a lot of order to the way they pack this, but we're just gonna go through it. Carnival blend. I don't love doing blends typically. You may have heard me say that in the past. The reason why is that whenever I grow a blend, and let's say I've got 3 or 4 different colors of carrots, this is just 3 or 4 different varieties that are mixed together. And if I don't know what variety it is, if I love it, then I'm gonna have a hard time finding it again. So I don't love that. However, I will occasionally do it just because I like colorful things. So this is a blend of, I think, 4 different types, orange, red, purple, and yellow. And this says it sows 21 feet of carrots. I've also got the Shin Carota. This is a great carrot. I've done this one before. They get really like good sized. Cosmic Purple. Also a great carrot. I've grown tons of these. These are not super sweet. It says this has a sweet flavor. In my experience, Cosmic Purple are not the sweetest carrots. In my experience, orangey and red carrots have been sweeter, whereas the purpley ones have been more parsley flavored. Like, I mean, they're still sweet. Carrots have a lot of sugar in them because they're a root. They're storing sugars in their root. But I wouldn't say that they're overwhelmingly sweet. Atomic Red, this is another really good one. So these are tried and true varieties for me. If you've tried to grow carrots before in the past and failed, I wouldn't necessarily take that on as a you issue. I would really try doing it during a different time of year. So really, for me, I most successfully grow carrots this time. So I get them sown here in the next couple of weeks. I have information about how to sow carrots. It's can be kind of tricky because the seeds are super small, but by covering the soil, I use a board. Basically, you just like do a very, very shallow trench, put the carrots in, and then cover it with a board. And you know, after a handful of days, go remove the board once they've germinated, and that works for me. I have shared that before. I can put a link to that information if you'd like to check it out. But for me in the spring, because it is so warm where I live and gets warm fast early on in the spring, usually carrots don't really thrive in the spring. So I'm excited to get a lot of carrots in the ground this year. Oh, Romanesco cauliflower. This, if I had to pick what I think are some of the most, like the top beautiful foods that you can grow in the garden, or the most fascinating, unique foods that you can grow, the Romanesco cauliflower would be there. If you've never seen one of these in real life, like they're extraordinarily cool. So here is kind of a picture. They have these really cool, I mean, they're like geometric formations in vegetable form. They're so neat. They taste good too. They taste very much like somewhere between cauliflower and broccoli. I don't know. It says it's not actually cauliflower, but somewhere between a broccoli and cauliflower. That's funny. That's what they taste like. And so I guess it's its own thing. A Romanesco is neither cauliflower or broccoli, but it looks similar to both of them. But yeah, they're really, really cool. They're very popular in gourmet food. This is kind of one of those things for me, which I have seen these in grocery stores since they've become popular in the home garden. But always specialty stores and always expensive, like more expensive than I want to spend on a head of something between a cauliflower and a broccoli. This is one of those things that I love, growing things that I otherwise wouldn't get to experience. I love growing things that are fascinating, that are unique, that it's motivating to me. That's why I grow the black radish and the colorful carrots and the purple sprouting broccoli, because pushing myself to go out in the garden can be hard. I mean, it's hard work. And that is how I've really overcome the struggle of showing up and sticking to the hard work and not moving on once I lose interest, because there are things in the garden that if I do not show up and help produce them, I'm never going to experience them. All right, so let's see. Next, twister cauliflower. This is new to me. I thought it was fascinating. It said showy twisted leaves furl around cauliflower heads, shielding them from the sun and keeping them bright, white, and beautifully domed. I thought that was really fascinating. So they have like these twisted leaves that encase them. and I thought that was neat. I figured I'd give it a try. It said medium to large heads, and that they're very uniform, which in my experience, most cauliflowers and broccolis and stuff like that in a variety are relatively uniform, but I thought we'd try it. I love cauliflower. That's another thing that any cauliflower, broccoli, really cabbage and Brussels sprouts, those 4 grown in the home garden are very drastically different from what you experience in a store. A lot more, I think they have more flavor. I could say that confidently, but the texture is very different. So I suppose that the varieties that you buy at the grocery store were probably grown for the sake of storage and shipment. And a lot of times you get those things from the grocery store and you cook them, and the cabbage will have that real, like, almost rubbery texture sometimes, or cauliflower and broccoli can also take on that rubbery, more dense texture. Whereas I feel like homegrown, where you can eat them so fresh, they're a lot lighter. I don't know that I'm doing that description justice, but man, I love homegrown brassicas. It's Jeremiah's favorite garden. He prefers the winter garden to the summer food. I can't say that because I love tomatoes and peppers, but I digress. I got a couple kinds of onion seeds. I've actually not really grown onions from seeds. I have started them before. I think I've probably grown a few. I know I've grown leeks from seeds. I've grown shallots from seeds. Mostly I buy sets. But I've been failing at onions since I moved to South Carolina. I grew so many onions in Arkansas, I didn't know what to do with them. We grew so many onions. And since I've come to South Carolina, I've just not been able to, like, nail that. So we're gonna try to start from seed this year and see what happens. Celery. This is actually another thing that I've really not grown much of. I've grown a little bit, but I've never, like, really harvested a ton of celery. So this is the Utah celery. Very basic, heirloom, very popular. Dinosaur kale, good tried and true. Lacinato kale. This is one that, okay, I don't want to go off on too many stories, but I mean, I guess that's what we're watching this for. But many years ago, whenever I really was first getting into food and cooking and locally sourcing food, I remember watching a person or reading a blog, and this person raved about dinosaur kale, and they had a garden and they grew it. And I remember going to whatever the health food store was. It wasn't Whole Foods at the time. Whole Foods eventually bought it, but I went there and they had the dinosaur kale. And this is 15 plus years ago. And at the time, that bunch of kale was like $4 or something. Whatever it is probably normally cost now, but at the time, I remember being like, I cannot afford to eat dinosaur kale. Like, I just can't afford it. And so when I first started growing a garden, this was one of the first things that I really wanted to grow. And I remember when I used to harvest these bunches of dinosaur kale, I would feel so rich. I would feel like, look at all of this that I have. Because I had remembered standing there in front of that case being like, $4 for a bunch of this? I can't do that. Again, I like to put things in my garden that are adding value to my experience of eating and adding actual value to my bank account, where I'm not having to buy these higher price things. You know, regular kale you can get for still, you know, a couple dollars for the organic stuff at the store, whereas dinosaur kale still costs more. I have space to grow all of them, but if you have to choose what you're going to give your space to, think about stuff like that. Grow more value when you can. Let's see, King Richard leeks. Again, that's kind of in hand with the onions. I'm going to start these from seed this year. I really like leeks. I think they're really good. I like having them to cook with other things. I like to put them in soups and cook them whenever I'm cooking like chickens. I'll cut up a bunch of leeks, but you know, they're good to have, kind of like an onion. Butterhead, Butter Crunch lettuce. I also got this Vivian romaine lettuce. I've grown the Butter Crunch. I've never grown the Vivian, but I mean a romaine lettuce. They're all more or less pretty similar, I think. And see, like some of these seeds, I have the organic ones, but not all of them. But yeah, these lettuces, grow those in the high tunnel. It's funny because eating seasonally in South Carolina, salads and lettuce is actually a winter food because I can't grow that stuff during the hot months. So we grow a lot of it during the winter. Progress number 9, shelling peas. This is a very commonly used heirloom. It's not a tall plant, so these only get 18 inches tall. If you're wanting to grow peas, either snap peas, like sugar snaps, or shelling peas, you need to be mindful of that because some plants are 4 or 5 feet tall and they need a trellis. If you're trying to grow them in a place where you don't have a trellis, something like the Progress number 9 would be a really good option. I think that this is a good option too if you are trying to grow them for the pea shoots, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I usually grow them for the peas, so I don't really know. So excited to grow those. I think sweet peas, sweet shelling peas are my kids' like favorite things that is in the fall garden. All right, American purple top rutabagas. Rutabagas are something that I did not discover a love for until I had a garden at home. And when I discovered that I loved rutabagas, I shared about them like it was the gospel. Like, here's the good news of the rutabaga. They're called Swedes in a lot of other countries. Here in the United States, we call them rutabagas. The purple top is good. I think they're better when they're smaller. When they get much bigger than like maybe like a good globe size, like, you know, handful size, they start getting a little bit woodier. There's another variety that I really like, a yellow one called Navone Yellow, and I really like that one. I feel like they taste good when they get a little bit bigger. And there's one also that's a purple top one called Lauren, I think, that's good. But they're all good. And the American purple top is the easiest seeds to find. So I always grow these, but I also like the yellow ones. When you harvest them smaller, they do taste sweeter and they're easier to mash. My favorite way to eat a rutabaga, cut it up and boil it like you would potatoes, and then drain the water off, mash it, and put some sour cream and chives in there, and, you know, salt and butter if you want to, like you would mix up mashed potatoes. It's so good. So good. I just, like, I can't tell you how many people I've made that for, that I'm like, you have to try this. So yeah, rutabagas. And they do great in the winter garden. You can more or less leave them outside, maybe a little bit of cover, but even when the tops die back, the roots are still good. When we had that really cold -12 in Arkansas, I had a whole bunch of rutabagas out in my high tunnel, which a high tunnel, when it's that cold, protects a little bit, but not, I mean, it was that cold for several days, so it was deeply frozen in the high tunnel. And I had some damage to the tops of the rutabagas, but the roots ended up being fine after that. French breakfast radishes. This is my favorite radish. I do have a favorite radish. Never met one I didn't like, but I definitely met one that I favored. These are longer. They're kind of like thinner around. They're white on the tips and then red on the body. And in my experience, the skin stays really smooth. They stay really good. A lot of times with radishes, they hollow out on the inside when they get a little bit bigger, and they get real woody and they can get really bitter. And I feel like French breakfast radishes just keep a good texture for a little bit longer. So I really like those. I did get this Easter egg radish blend. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of blends because I like to know what I'm growing, but occasionally I'll go for it for the color. Sugar magnolia peas. This is my favorite snap pea. It is beautiful. This pea is like very, like, they're fairy tale plants. And I don't say that about very many plants. They have a lot of tendrils on them. The flowers, whenever they put flowers on to set their pods, are really pretty. They're like a purplish magenta. And it says here on the package that they have long hypertendrils, which is vigorous multi-branching tendrils. So they have all of these little like curly Q tendrils that come off. And they're just beautiful. They're beautiful to see. And they will cover a trellis. So if you have cattle panel trellises up that maybe you were growing tomatoes on in the spring, something like sugar magnolia peas do great on those. I'll use the same trellis as for the tomatoes to put these on. And they don't mind it cold. They don't mind it even freezing. And they do have to be trellis though, because if they're all piled up on top of each other, they are prone to like mildews and stuff. So you want to get them up off the ground. But I love those, and they're purple. The pods are purple, and they taste really good. So all around, it's a win. Oh, let's see. I got some squashes. I guess I just got a couple. This is the Emerald Delight. This is a hybrid. Its maturity in 50 to 55 days. I was going for some summer squashes so that I could plant them now and get another wave of summer squash before the freeze comes in. And then this is Max's Gold, also a hybrid. It says they're ideal for grilling, snacking on fresh, or adding to salads. So I honestly just grabbed what was in stock, and I thought that those both looked good. Celebration Swiss Chard. This is similar to the Bright Lights variety. Swiss Chard, I'm gonna be honest, some people think that this tastes nasty. It is definitely a little gross. Like, I'm really selling it here, but Swiss Chard is earthy. Like, it's an earthy plant. The best way to eat Swiss chard to me is sauteed in a lot of aromatics. So with onion and garlic in some sort of oil, and then once it's finished, like salt, pepper, and then even like a splash of lemon juice or a splash of some sort of vinegar to help cut the fat that you cooked in the oil. You could put some like bacon in it or something like that, just how you would cook greens. It's so pretty though, and it's just such a beast, man. Like, you can plant this and start harvesting baby greens in 20 days, and you just harvest a few leaves, leave the rest. And then, I mean, you just harvest this for so long, and then it'll grow through the winter and then into the spring. It tastes better when it's cold outside. So again, if you've tried chard in the past, you've been like, I don't like that, I didn't like that at all, trying to grow it during the winter. Any root vegetable or leafy thing is going to taste better when it's cold outside versus growing it in the heat. Because the nature of that kind of plant with vegetables is like, vegetable doesn't mean anything in botany. Like a fruit is the seed-bearing structure of a plant. It's like a plant's ovary. So a tomato, a cucumber, like anything that is holding seeds, a pepper, those are all fruits, botanically speaking. And fruits are designed to taste good. Like, that's the whole plant's design, is they're putting their seeds in something that's going to attract something else to come eat it and digest the seeds and leave them in their waste, therefore planting more of the plant. That's why plants are growing. They just want to exist. They're not growing to feed us. They're growing to continue existing. With vegetables, we're eating leaves, stems, roots, like leaf and stem. Well, I'm grabbing all of the fruits here, my squash and all these different things. Roots, leaves, all of these things, we're just eating parts of the plant. They're not designed to taste good. However, there are times you can eat them that they do taste good. So like in the winter, root vegetables are storing all of that sugar in their roots because that plant is just trying to survive the winter so that in the spring it can send up its center stalk and make seeds and continue it to exist. Like, it's just trying to make seeds. So if you grow those in the winter and you harvest them in the winter when they have the most sugar stored in their root, you're gonna get the sweetest beet. You're gonna get the sweetest carrot. With leaves like this, it's kind of the same thing. They're storing the sugars, and they're storing all of this energy in the leaves to get through the winter. Whereas whenever you harvest these same things when it's hot outside, they might be really, really bitter. A lot of times is because the heat is actually signaling to that plant that it's almost time to start producing flowers. So they actually start producing chemicals to make the plant itself bitter because they're trying to ward off anything that would come and eat it right before it's about to make its flowers and its seeds. So wintertime is the time to enjoy this stuff for sure. I also got this 5-color silver beet. This is another Swiss chard. This was redundant of me, but I just got excited about all the color, so it's pretty much the same thing. Oh, Market Express turnips. These are so good. Very mild. You can actually take these, harvest them smallish when they're like somewhere between golf ball and baseball size. Like is when you want to get these, like a little bit bigger than a golf ball. You can harvest them at 30 days. They'll be like this big and they taste really good then. You can let them get a little bit bigger and get more food per seed. But take these and matchstick cut them. So cut them in slices, turn on sideways, and cut them into little matchsticks. And that is fantastic on a salad. You can cut them kind of like French fries, a little bit bigger than matchsticks, and ferment them, and they're really, really good. You can mash them alone or with the rutabagas or with some potatoes, and they're really, really good. Probably the most common way that I use turnips as well as rutabagas and potatoes in the winter is I'll take a chicken and thaw it out, cut a bunch of herbs from the garden, and soften some butter, usually kind of a lot because, you know, I have a cow and we have a lot of butter and I'm not afraid of fat. So I'll maybe like a good at least stick of butter or something like that. Soften that and then mix a bunch of herbs into it, whatever herbs you like. I usually do like oregano. In the winter, it's oregano, thyme, rosemary, because that's what's growing. And then I will put that all underneath the skin of the chicken, and then I will chop up a bunch of turnips and rutabagas and potatoes and put it all around the chicken and roast it. And so essentially that chicken fat and all that butter with the herbs like cooks down, and all of these roots cook in it, and it's really good. I bet y'all are all getting hungry. I'm getting hungry. I'm sitting here like trying not to let my mouth water while I talk to you guys. Cilantro seeds. Cilantro is a winter crop here in the hot south. This is just next to impossible to grow. I mean, it just goes straight to seed as soon as it gets hot. It's kind of cruddy that that's the way it is because I use the cilantro most in the summer while I'm making salsa and stuff with my tomatoes and different things that grow in the summer. So this year I'm going to try to grow a lot of this. I grew it last year. I saved some, but I'm going to try to freeze dry a bunch of it this year. So grow it, and then that way I can add it into my salsas once summer comes. Dill, another thing that does best here in the winter or in the early spring, so I won't want to grow it before that. I got this bouquet dill, which this is what I have typically grown. You've seen these probably, these dill bouquets in pickles and stuff. But then this one was interesting, and I've never grown this. It's called Tetra. It says it's a bushy, late flowering variety, meaning more leaf production for dill lovers, and that it's heat tolerant, which makes it slow to bolt. So that's why I grabbed this one. I'm gonna grow both. I liked this. I literally almost went like this. So silly. It smells so lovely. I love the smell of dill. But I'm going to grow them both. I like dill bouquets. I like putting the actual flower bouquets inside of pickles whenever I make pickles. So I didn't want to not have that, but having a lot of this that I could dry or freeze dry, I thought would be really cool. And then afterwards, it is the host plant, or one of the host plants for swallowtail butterflies, which I've been sharing with you guys on my garden tours. We've had a lot of swallowtail butterfly caterpillars. All right, I got two different kinds of Alyssum, Oriental Nights and Allure Pastel Blend. Alyssum is a really beautiful, dainty flower. It's most commonly seen in white. I think it's called Sweet William is the variety that's white that is probably what you've seen. Or there's one called Tall Alyssum, which is a white alyssum that just grows taller than the normal one, or the most common one, I should say. Alyssum is deer resistant. It is a really great ground cover. It has what's called partitioning roots, which means it doesn't compete for resources with what it's growing around. Its roots actually separate out and grow around things, so that's nice. And it's a brassica, actually. It is edible. It tastes a little like funky broccoli. Like, it's like it's pungent. So I don't know that people are actively growing this a ton to eat, but I don't know, you could play around with it and find something. I really like it because it will bloom even when it's freezing outside. Well, I should say, even when it has frozen outside and is freezing even at nights, this will bloom. So where I live, it can still be warmish, you know, like a good bit above freezing during the days, even though the nights may be freezing, which means that, you know, if it's warm enough, the bees and the insects are still foraging. So if I can find things that still will have blooms on them during those times, I like that. Plus it adds beauty to the garden and color. So Alyssum is one of my favorite companion plants to put in the garden, and I like it whenever I can find the different colors. So that's why I grabbed those. Next, sweet peas. Now you may recall the last time I did a seed unboxing, I had multiple packages of sweet peas. Sweet peas are a flower that here in the South we call shelling peas, or English peas, sweet peas also. The little green ones that you shell and eat young, tasty with butter. These are not edible. These are actually toxic and will make you really sick if you eat them. But they are beautiful and highly, highly fragrant. As my local friend Jenny was telling me, she's from England, and she was telling me that they grow like weeds there. So that's really cool. Do you live where these grow like weeds? If so, what a deal, man. Our weeds are not this good here. But this one was called High Scent. And I was like, sign me up, because the regular scent is high and it is wonderful. And so if this one has even more of that, I was like, yes, please. This one is called My Navy. This is one I did not have. Bluish flowers, like deep purple and blue, are fairly unusual. So to see this, I was like, that's really cool. And having the dark bloom would be really cool in bouquets. And then this is called Perfume Delight, which was another high fragrance blend. I have some other seeds also, quite a few, that I am looking forward to being able to grow a lot of these. We're gonna put a bunch of these in the high tunnel. I think this year in my garden, Will planted the sweet peas last year. He actually planted them outside and in the high tunnel. And whenever I saw them and I asked, you know, oh, what'd you put in here? And he said, oh, sweet peas. I thought he was talking about like sweet peas, like what you eat. And then I quickly realized that that wasn't it. And I asked him, I was like, what kind of peas were those? And he said, you know, the flowers. You plant them in the fall and they overwinter and they bloom in the spring. I was like, I've never grown those before. The reason why is that in Arkansas, before I moved here, my garden was right next to my goat yard. And though my goats did not often get into my garden, they did occasionally. And so anything that was toxic, like sweet peas are toxic for something to eat, with small children and boundary defying goats, I didn't ever put these in. I'd see them, but I'd be like, I can live without them, it's fine. And then Will put them in, and I was like, well, cool, we'll try it. I don't have the goats anymore, and my kids are old enough that if I tell them to leave something alone, they do. I was missing out. I love these flowers. They smell amazing. Everybody who visited my garden in the spring, I cut them a bouquet and send them with it. And I'm like, just put it in your cup holder in a cup and let your car smell amazing for the next 2 days. No. Can you tell I'm excited about this? All right, now Botanical Interests also has big packs. Not on everything, but on things that you may want to sell a lot, they'll have a large package, which like for instance, here's a gourmet beet blend, and I figured it out essentially looking at the prices, and like a regular package will be something like $3, $3.50, $4 maybe, depending on the variety. Their prices are different. But then they'll often have a large pack, which essentially has the seeds of multiple packages in it, and you get it for a discount. So this was only $5.59 for the large pack. This has, this is cool. Not all of their blends have this, but this one does, which makes me excited because I've told you how I feel about this. This is a blend of 3 different beets, and it says which one's on the back. So it's Detroit Dark Red, Kioja, and Golden. Now, so if you want to try multiple beets, this is it. Now you can't tell looking at the seeds which is which. You're gonna have to grow them to know what's what. But I like the fact that in one package you can get 3 different types, and this is enough to sow quite a bit here in this package. So I'm excited to have this variety. Here I have 2 big packages of greens for baby greens, arugula, which is probably I would say arugula is probably my favorite baby green to grow. I used to eat salads all the time. Like, that was like a massive part of my diet. I don't as much anymore. I went on carnivore a year ago, and now when I eat like leafy things like this, it's more like it's added on to the majority of my food. It's not the majority of my food. I still grow salad greens because we still make salads. I just don't eat them every day like I used to. So I will still grow like the mesclun mix, which this is more or less, I think, what the free package is. I like growing these in my green stalk. Green stalks really help keep greens clean, whereas on the ground they get splashed back from rain and watering, and the green stalk eliminates that. I'll still spin them in a salad spinner after I pick them, but there's very rarely anything on them if they're grown in the green stalk. Arugula, I love. Arugula is so spicy, and this is a kind of green. We'll use this like a little bit on a burger. It's great as a topper on pizzas, and I like this. I've never done this before, but it says on the package, make a spicy pesto. I'm gonna have to give that a try. So it's nice. It does really well in the winter. It is really great for a real fresh salad if you want to make it. Just, they say here, which I've actually done this, simply toss with balsamic vinegar and Parmesan cheese. That's kind of my favorite way to do a salad. Sometimes I'll mash up an avocado, which I can't grow those, I have to get that at the store, and then toss a salad with mashed avocado and with just some olive oil and like some balsamic vinegar and then salt and pepper, and you can put Parmesan cheese on it, and that's like a really great basic salad. So I really love arugula though. This is my favorite baby green. This is a cool mix that I decided I would give it a shot. This is called, they call it smoothie mix. It does list out what is in the back. Now I gotta see something. Did I miss? No, these other ones don't say what kind of radishes and carrots it is. This actually says it has beets, lettuce, spinach, and Swiss chard in this mix. I gotta look at it. So when you get a mix that's for baby greens or for microgreens, I'm gonna get to these, they're not special seeds for that. Like, this is, if you took this mix of beets, lettuce, spinach, and Swiss chard and you sowed them with enough space for them to actually grow fully, they would. There you go. Look at that. I mean, you could probably figure out what's what here as far as like the spinach, the beets. So say you wanted to grow a handful of beets, you didn't want to buy a package, and you were mostly going to do these baby greens, you could pick out some of these beet seeds and grow them. Of course, you don't know what variety you're going to get. But I thought this was really cool and a cool idea to grow these all as baby greens. So with baby greens, you're going to just sow everything really close together. And you're going to harvest them young. So you don't have to worry about spacing. The reason we worry about spacing is to give everything ample resources to get its full size. But if you're going to harvest them at 30 days, it doesn't matter. So you just sow them all super close together and then cut them all when they're young. And I thought the smoothie mix idea was interesting, so it appealed to me and I got it. Now the rest of these, okay, no, I have one more baby greens. Red Russian kale baby green mix. So this is a large pack, because with baby greens, you're going to sow them super close together. So you're going to need a lot more seeds to fill a space. And with this as kale, sowing them close together, we're going to cut it at 25-30 days when they're this big, and then use it in salads or on a burger topping or in a smoothie. But if you were to take a few of these seeds and space them out 12 inches apart, you're going to get the big kale plant with the big leaves that you could juice or roast or whatever. I just thought that was cool. These other packages, I've got 5 packages here of microgreens. Again, these are just regular seeds. You could take these and plant them spaced out and get regular sized plants. But I'm gonna grow them for microgreens. I really like microgreens since, as I said, I don't do as many greens now as I used to. It's more like a garnish, or just to add a little bit of fresh flavor to something else. I've really come to really like microgreens because I can eat some of them without it being the majority. So I'll like make fried eggs with bacon, which is a largely animal-based, you know, plate of food, which is carnivore paleo. But I can put a handful of microgreens on top of that. This is a mild mix, and this is so cool. It actually has the types and varieties in here. So it's bull's blood beet, red acre cabbage, kohlrabi, bok choy cabbage, and Lucullus Swiss chard. So you could potentially, you know, grow these out to full-size plants if you wanted to. Or you can sow these all in a tray and cut them when they're this big. Microgreens have a ton of nutrition in them. And again, they add that flavor. This one I'm excited about. I got 2 packages. You can tell I'm excited. Cilantro as a microgreen. I just wanted to try this because of that issue of not being able to grow cilantro outside. I thought, well, that would be really cool. If this works, then I could keep cilantro microgreens growing throughout the summer and potentially use these in place of where I need some cilantro if I want fresh cilantro without having to go buy it at the store. As it is, when I make like salsa, I've got onions, garlic, tomatoes, and peppers, all from my farm, but I have to go buy the cilantro. And the last one, I also got 2 packages of this because that's, I'm excited if I get 2 packages because rarely do I actually need this much. Basil. They have this blend called Ciao Bella Basil Blend that they sell in these large packages for microgreens. And basil microgreens are so good. I love basil. It is the taste of summer for me, but if I could grow these microgreens over winter in my house and use them on my food, it doesn't have to be the taste of summer. It could be the taste of any time, and I'm about that. So this has Genovese and dark opal basil in it. It lists the varieties in the blend. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think microgreens, for those of you who are not doing a fall garden, but you still want to grow something, microgreens are great. Like, you can do those on the counter in your kitchen. You could set up a light and do them in your laundry room. You don't even really have to have a light for microgreens because they really don't grow that long. But yeah, like setting up a space and just have space for a couple of trays, you can grow a good deal of stuff. And having something like cilantro and basil that's going to add so much flavor, I think that's awesome. I like spicy microgreens, but my family doesn't dig them as much. But I'm thinking if I can keep cilantro and basil microgreens growing through the winter, we'll really be able to get through those. So there is my seed order, my unboxing that I wanted to share with you guys. I do want to encourage you to, you know, check out and maybe be able to get some deals on your seeds now. Another thing to know is that seed companies do typically restock here in the next couple of months. They're starting to bring in their seeds for the following year. And if you're trying to get some of the rare stuff, or if you want to be able to go on and have all the options, now is actually the time to shop for next year's garden. As you ease into like the holiday season, and then especially right after the holiday season, that's when the majority of people buy their seeds, because that's when people are like over Christmas and they're starting to think about the garden again. But now, if you start looking, you can get a deal, but you're also, as they get their stock in, you're going to have the most options as far as stuff not being sold out. So it's a good time to look at seeds. I also think it's a good time because the garden is fresh and you can think about what didn't work for you, what you're looking for. It's still fresh on your mind now. Whereas through winter on the other side, you may be tempted to seed shop with maybe a little more blind optimism than you might have at the end of the season, when you actually can still remember what you felt and what you want. So take that or leave it. There's a link to Botanical Interest down below. They're a good one, and I feel confident in sending you guys to them because I've been buying seeds from Botanical Interest since before I ever had a YouTube channel. So thank you for hanging out with me today and all the days that you do. God bless you. Until next time.